de créer l'égalité. To see the world heal, to see the world grow. We will give, we will sow.
26 October 2024. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mpiwa Gwindi. How are you, Mpiwa?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Gambakwe. I'm doing good. How are you?
Okay, fantastic. I'm doing very well. And I'm so happy to have you here for the first time on this platform. And today, I think people are going to enjoy the discussion that we're going to have because we've never had anyone like you. You have done a lot. And I've been watching you. I've been following all the work that you've been doing. Recently, you were at the United Nations. What was that all about?
Yes, so thank you firstly. It's an honor to be the first of hopefully many artists who will be coming onto your broadcast. So yes, my name is Mpiwa. I'm an Afrofusion artist, and I'm also a musician and a performer, multi-instrumentalist. And for the second year in a row, I went to the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization in October this month to an event called the World Food Forum. There they focus on increasing youth engagement in policy making for sustainable agri-food systems. That sounds like a mouthful, but the main thing is just having kids, young people come in to pitch the community projects that they've come up with for farming, for resource extraction from the earth. And what I went to do is to lobby for that same message, but through creative means. So I wrote an anthem for them last year called Together, and that's the song that you heard coming in. And that song was singing about the importance of youth unity and sustainability. So I went to sing that song along with all of my other original songs that I've been making and releasing since 2021. And the main messages that I was communicating through my music was peace, love, empowerment, sustainability, safety, security, and the like. So that's what I was in Rome, Italy doing.
Okay, great stuff. So currently you're based in Singapore.
Correct.
How did you end up
you can
Singapore?
see in the background right now, the camera is not so good, but if I take myself out of it, you can see the very pretty sky, very nice sunset. It's 6 p.m. in Singapore. We're about 6 hours ahead of Zim in South Africa. So it's very much a very big difference, even though the sky might tell you differently. But I've been in Singapore for the past 4 years. And I started here studying at a university called Yale NUS College. And I was studying international relations and global affairs with a focus on environmental studies. So when we link it to the work that I've done, especially creatively, you can see that I focus mainly on a word of sustainable messaging, as well as my interest to do with youth empowerment and also female empowerment. So that's what I'm doing here. I've just recently transitioned to a bit of work, but I always keep my passion for music alive through different performances, both in Singapore and different places around the world, including Malaysia, South Africa, Kenya, and France, and the United States.
Okay, so that's very exciting. Tell us about your journey. How did you get started? Where did you go to school in Zimbabwe? Where were you born?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions. I totally love answering this question. So where I went to school is actually very important to my journey because I started off primarily as an instrumentalist. For those who know, I went to Dominican Convent Primary School in Harare, just off of Third Street, and it was very, very much a place that focused on students' excellence in extracurricular activities. There came a time when we had to choose what extracurricular activities we wanted to do, and I was very, very undecided. I remember being like, I'm not too sure if I wanted to do sports, if I wanted to do particularly swimming or tennis, or do I want to play bridge? Because some of my friends were playing cards or something. Like I was just very confused at that time, and I was only like about 10 years old. So I was very young, and I remember my friend just said, "Hey, let's let's go to marimbas, Hande marimba." And I was like, "Okay, all right, let me just go and see to DJ, what are the instruments about?" So I went, and then as soon as my friend invited me, like I sat down in the hall that they were playing the marimbas in. It was an ensemble, and I just saw how much joy was in my friends' like faces, and these are the same friends that I'm going into class with, and it just seemed like they just transformed whilst they were performing, whilst they were playing those instruments. And it was at that moment that I was like, you know what? I need to pick this instrument up. I need to also learn how to play. So and I remember the one who struck out to me the most was one of my friends who was playing the bass marimba. And for those who know, the marimba, which is like a wooden xylophone, has a wooden board ranging from different pitches, and they're labeled accordingly, and you play with different mallets. You play with a mallet, with two mallets. So my friend was playing the bass, was playing the biggest marimba of them all, and I looked at her, and she's tiny, and I was also small. I still am, and I was like, okay, I want to start there. So I started, and it was very encouraging, because as soon as I started, like my friend was enjoying myself as well. And from then on, it was all like history. I started going for so many marimba practices. We also had a highlight in 2012, when about a year later, where my marimba band, as well as another marimba band, was invited to actually perform at the Harare International Festival of Arts, Haifa, when it was still a very much big thing. And we were training and practicing for those events. And we also were invited to perform at a very important sports event at Mikkel's Hotel as well. And we also played and recorded an album at the late Oliver Mtuwa's Bakare studio. And this was all within a year. And at that point, I was very much in love with the instrument. And I knew I wanted to continue playing that. I also picked up mbira afterwards, and I started just continuing learning these two traditional instruments, and I just felt connected to, firstly, like just what it looks like to play marimba and mbira as a Zimbabwean, knowing the rich history and the culture that is associated with Shona people and these instruments, as well as just general Zimbabweans. And I just continued learning from then on. And I went on into high school, continuing to play in different events in school. And I would just say the first time my music went international was in 2018. And it's a bit of a long story, but I ended up organizing one event called the Zimarimba Fest, at Prince Edward School, just right in the center of Harare. And this event was an officially registered Guinness World Record attempt for the largest marimba ensemble to ever play. So we surpassed that world record by over 100 marimba players. And for those who were there, I just want to say thank you so, so much, because we broke a record that deserved to be owned by us, right? We had to claim that from the previous holders. And yeah, from then on, I started going more international. I went on to the US, so I performed at an event called the World Championships of Performing Arts, and I reached the finals after competing against about 2,000 plus contestants from all over the world. And I reached the finals with my marimba instrument as well as my mbira instrument. And I was so proud of myself, and I was proud of my country and my culture. And I knew this is something that I wanted to continue doing. So since then, I started composing my own music. And eventually, when COVID hit, it was hard for me to kind of put out my work as an instrumentalist and a performer, because of the fact that concerts and live events were no longer as common because of the restrictions, COVID restrictions. So in 2021, I decided to teach myself how to produce. I started taking master classes in music production. I was using Logic Pro. For those who know my Apple products, they're not simple. but I started learning Logic Pro as a digital audio workstation for production of my music. And then in 2021, I released my first ever single. A year later, I released my EP, and that took off. And since then, I've been collaborating with different artists, different producers, and also writing more music. And fast forward about 3 years later into releasing music, I am in a place where I can say I want to continue growing. I want to continue communicating the same messages that I do about, safety, about acknowledging the beauty that's around us. And yeah, just continuing to be a performer as well, but also to, I guess, digitize the work that I've done through like releasing music. And if it affords me amazing opportunities like the FAO, for United Nations, and performing in different countries, going to different events, I'm very, very honored to do so. So that's a long story, but I hope that is a good summary of how I got here music-wise.
Okay. Are you still able to see me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not able to see you for some reason, but let's see if I can put myself back on into the layout. For some reason, I've lost you. But anyway, I'm here now. So I just want to take you back to Prince Edward. You said Prince Edward?
Yeah.
That is where you did the marimba. How did you get the organizational skills to work on the world record? What happened?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I had just finished my O levels, just finished at writing my examinations. And it was one of those situations where I was kind of asking myself, what would I like to do next? I knew that I wanted to continue on to my A levels, but I didn't know if I wanted to continue in the same way that is usually known. So I decided, especially since I wanted to change schools at that time, to go to a different school in South Africa that I really liked because it had a focus on all-roundedness, holistic development. I decided to take a break from school. So the first thing was me having time to commit.
Okay.
So I needed time to commit to this. And I remember it was around the 26th of February when I decided to officially say, let's work on the Marimba Fest. And very much with the help of my mom, she also helped me to see the fact that this is something that's possible. We researched on what the current world record was for the largest marimba ensemble to ever play, and we were like, nah. I personally, me myself, it did not there are more numbers in terms of marimba players, and I was like, no, we have to break this. So from then on, my mom broke it down for me, and I have to give so much credit to her because she helped me to understand what it meant like to pitch to different sponsors, to also ask for different partnerships with brands. And we ended up breaking down the event to say, this is what we need, and this is how we're going to get it. So first we need, like for the event-wise, logistics-wise, we'll start there. We're going to need food for these participants who are going to come. How can we pitch this to potential caterers so that they can assist us with food and bev? And how can we also make it beneficial for them? And at that time, since also social sustainability and social responsibility was not too much of a big thing, we also had to make sure that we communicated it more strongly than it is these days. So in terms of saying that you will be helping to push an event that's very much helping to put Zimbabwean culture amongst other world cultures to be recognizable. And we also made sure to be consistent with our outreach, with the emails, and just calling people to make sure that they also knew about who we were. We did get a lot of no's, okay, in the case of like food and bev, for example. But yeah, like that's just an example of like a glimpse of what it looked like to organize an event like that. When we needed the participants, that was also a whole different approach of marketing. Now we had to get onto the socials, the social media, creating short videos, making sure that people know that we are not like just lying. We have marimba players in the background. This is not a scam. We're asking you guys to use your transport facilities to travel from wherever you are in the country to travel with your marimbas on Africa Day, which is a public holiday, to bring your instruments to the center of Harare. You know, we had to tell them that this is something that we wanted to do, and we wanted them to also commit. So we ended up creating a registration link where different marimba bands would commit to coming, and we would check in with them each and every single day. That was my most favorite thing to do, because every week we would check in with the different marimba bands to see how they were faring out with the different videos that we would send out, because we wanted them to learn the song prior, so that when they arrive at the actual event, they know how to play the song that we're going to play. So they knew that we were consistent, we were reachable. So I think the main lessons that I learned from that, especially coming out of that experience, was the importance of being able to communicate a strong message, being consistent with the partners that you want, and then also making sure that you are credible and you've got good logos, good brands that are associated. So that was a big thing, and I learned so much through that event. And I continued taking those skills through like the rest of my high school years and into my university years, and now especially into my work period. So now it's I think that was my first ever project, and I have so much to owe to my mom and the people who also supported her as well.
Okay, so you were in primary school at the time?
At that time, I was now in high school.
Okay, so what form was that?
That was now, I just finished my O levels, so just finished Form 4.
Okay, so after Form.
There we go.
Yes, we just switched sides.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm saying, did you go to A levels?
Yes, so after that, I moved on to my A levels. I went to a school in South Africa. I studied French, history, and English language.
All right. So you studied in South Africa, and then what happened?
So in South Africa, I did a lot more in terms of like project management, music, and with that, I ended up applying to university, whilst continuing my music passion of performing. And the school that I was at, has actually been my past 4 years, and I've just recently transitioned into working. So I'm at a school called Yale NUS College. It's called it's just right in the west of Singapore.
Okay, so after your A levels, you then went to Singapore directly.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So from Zim to South Africa to Singapore.
Okay. And at Singapore, what did you study?
I studied international relations and global affairs with a focus on environmental studies.
Okay. How is Singapore?
So Singapore is
cost of living, so forth.
Yes. Yeah, so one would think, like, when I tell them that I live in Singapore, they think that I'm a baller. I'm not a baller. No, I was just merely a student. I still kind of am, but it's a great country in terms of it being an organized place. Pune system, it's a very beautiful country. It has wonderful sunsets, and I feel very, very bad because the camera is not doing the sunset justice, but we've got one in the background right now as it's getting dark and transitioning into 7 p.m. But yeah, it's a very organized place. I really love this place because it's got beautiful buildings, lots of skyscrapers, very good food as well. Singapore is known to be a very almost like a melting pot for Asian cultures. So I've had the privilege of being able to eat like Korean food, Taiwanese, Indonesian, Malaysian. And it's very nice because with that I get to meet many different types of people here, and it's very diverse as well. Like, if someone would say, Puchi, you want to come to Asia, I would definitely encourage anyone here who is listening to say, come to Singapore, because you actually get everything that you would want to experience. But the caveat is that since Singapore is one of the most expensive cities to live in the world, it's very difficult to kind of enter and live especially if you come from a weaker currency country. So I would definitely say come here if you do have more finances. But if you know someone personally, it's very much more helpful to cut costs by staying at their places, which is what a lot of people do. But kuno, yeah, it's very expensive. Kuno dura. Just from just rent to food sometimes. But yeah, it just depends on the type of experience you want to have. And I would say, just to add on the last remark, is that because I've had the privilege of being a student here, I've had a lot of subsidized like costs. So things got cut down for me because I'm a student, and I'm also under a university that helps me to kind of live well whilst not spending too much. And I get on-campus residence that I pay through school fees. So it's very much not the same as everyone who lives here in Singapore. But then now that, you know, ndapedza chikoro and I'm also now moving on to the working world, I'm starting to feel what it looks like to pay rent. So it's very much not cheap. But if you know someone, it helps.
Oh, okay, take me through a typical cost of living of Singapore.
Yeah, good question. So let's start with rent, because rent is a big chunk of a lot of people's entry-level jobs salary. So with Singapore rent, you would be expected to pay between 2,500 and 3,500 Singaporean dollars a month. And that is for an apartment that has like maybe 2 bedrooms. The more bedrooms you have, the more you pay. So definitely the thing that a lot of us do as young entry-level job seekers is that we find people to live with, and then we cut the costs. So we end up paying between 1,000 and 1,500, or maybe up to 2,000 for people who are living in more expensive areas. So that's you know, for an entry-level job, now your salary is about maybe at least 3,500, and that's a good part of your salary that's going to rent, between 1,000 and 1,500 up to 2,000. But now when it comes to meals, it also depends on where you're going. So if you're going to be going to a very fancy restaurant, you can expect to pay between like $30, $40, 50 up to 60 sometimes if it's very, very fancy. But if you want the absolute peak experience of like artisanal food that's catered and also very fancy high-end food, yeah, you're paying for a 3-course meal. You'll definitely pay like $180 to $200, which is very much quite a lot of people like to do that, especially on the weekends. But there are some very nice places here in Singapore where you can go to like what is called like a hawker center. And a restaurant is like it's like an open air place where you have different varieties of food to choose from. Comes from different countries as well, which is what is nice, because you can experience different cuisines from different countries just in one place. Meals there generally range from $5 to $10, depending on whatever you would like. Just yesterday, I had some Chinese beef noodles for about $8, and it's one of my favorite meals to have because it's got soup and it feels very comforting. And the beef, I don't know, it just feels very great. And it's very rare to find beef kunoka as well, I must say. Since Singapore is also a country where there's no farmland, nothing, everything is imported. So I realized that's also something that we take for granted as a very big continent. We have a lot of topographies in our country. There's mountains, there's valleys, there's so much biodiversity. We have so many animals and different like types of weather patterns. Here, there's barely any space. There's barely any land. That's why we have a lot of high rise in Singapore. High rise skyscrapers, right? So people live on the 25th up to the 50th floor of a condominium, or like just a general like apartment. Whereas and like for that that means that there's no like animals. So a lot of these things are like imported from like Malaysia or Indonesia. So because of that, import taxes hike up the prices for food. So it's very much a very limited country, but they have made it so that you have everything, but of course you're paying more for it. But yeah, I think Singapore is a very organized country because of the efficiency of the availability of resources. You can just tell the government is very committed to making sure that its citizens have a high quality of living, especially according to the amount of things that they pay for. So yeah, because of that, also transport system, it's top of the range, best transport system I've ever experienced, especially comparing with Europe. Yeah, I think Singapore is very much organized. You have applications that you can use to actually track where the bus is, how long away it is, so that you can time your your arrival at the bus stop, and it will definitely come on time without fail. So it's a very much a remarkable country in that sense.
Okay, and how are the job prospects and salaries?
Yeah, so job prospects and salaries in Singapore are very much expert based for my foreigners. So for foreigners, there's a certain different types of sectors that you can get into here. So because of that, you can either be very, very specialized or have had a lot of experience and now you're just being invited to work in Singapore. Or if you're starting out, you have to be working towards it for a lot of years prior. So the main sector that foreigners usually come to Singapore to work in is finance, because Singapore is known to be the finance district. But nowadays, there is a few people who are getting into like consulting, even though that is primarily a job for locals. There are a lot of people who are now showing that excellence to get into consulting. Social impact and sustainability is something that's now on the rise. It's becoming a bit popular, and that's a lot of people are getting into that. But yeah, the main thing is finance, wealth management, real estate, and for the prospects, they're very much present, but it's very competitive. So in most cases, companies are looking for permanent residents or Singaporeans. And when you apply, it is very much in your favor to inquire before you apply that if this company is willing to hire foreigners, because sometimes there are quotas that these companies have to adhere to. They can only hire a certain amount of foreigners, and depending on whether this company is allowed to even hire, sometimes they may not even be looking for foreigners. They're just looking for Singaporeans or permanent residents. So yeah, it's very much there. Like the prospects are there. You just have to dig deep. You have to network. You have to have some grit and also hope. Strike while the iron is hot. But the salaries kind of pay off, especially if you're earning on the higher level. Entry levels tends to have a maximum of about 4,500. Rare cases go above that, but usually the average is about 3,500 Singaporean dollars a month.
Okay, now let's go to African leaders. A lot of African leaders have got homes in Singapore. Singapore is like the country is a city, right?
Yes.
Have
so
you
it's a
ever
city.
seen where our African leaders live in Singapore?
Hey, nah, I'm not going to lie. I'm not involved, and this is not the first time people are asking me this question. Someone asked me this question last week. I said, you know what? I'm not involved. I've heard. I can only say I've heard something, but I have no idea where they live. But I can tell you this: there are certain areas where you can tell that this place probably has some high level, high wealth, high profile people, and that's where there's landed property. Like what we were discussing earlier about how there's high-rise skyscrapers that most people live in here because of limited space. The more horizontally you build, the more expensive your property is. And of course, you'll be paying up to millions for something that people would usually pay like maybe 100,000 maximum in other countries. But here, because space is limited, you're paying millions. So that's probably where they live. There's some districts, there's some areas here that are known to be quite for people like those. So I can, that's what I can say with much certainty.
Okay. And yeah, a lot of Zimbabweans over there?
I think in terms of the African population, the most nationality I've seen is Kenyans. I think Kenyans are everywhere.
Okay.
But Zimbabweans, I think the numbers have gone down. I think there were a lot when I arrived in 2020. But because of the closure of our embassy in 2021, the numbers have gone down for Zimbabweans. But one would expect to think that there are Zimbabweans here because, of the history between Zimbabwe and Singapore. But I think right now the only indication of our relationship between of Zimbabwe's relationship with Singapore is just that when we enter, we get 30 days free without a visa when you enter Singapore. So for any Zimbabwean who wants to visit, you don't have to worry about a visa, which is nice, but there are not a lot of Zimbabweans here.
Okay, and the flight from Zimbabwe to Singapore, how does it travel and how much does it cost?
Yeah, I think, okay, so there's definitely no direct. That's the first thing. So if you want the easiest, Singapore Airlines will travel you to Johannesburg. So you can do Singapore to Joburg, and then after that you can connect from Joburg, whichever airline you'd like. But there is also, you can use the UAE Airlines, so you can use Qatar, you can use Etihad, you can use Emirates. All of those will just give you the layovers in their respective UAE countries. Some other countries, some other routes that I've heard of, but are not as convenient or affordable, are probably flying to Ethiopia. So you can also use Ethiopian Airways from here, and you can fly to Ethiopia and then connect accordingly with whichever airline you want. And usually the range between those ones is about 1,500 Singaporean dollars to 2,500 Singaporean dollars. For USD, that'll be 1,200 to about 2.3 USD.
Okay, that's amazing. So I think a lot of people will benefit from your advice and travel to Singapore. What do you do when you go to Singapore? What happens there? Do you do shopping? Is there game parks? Is there beaches? What is there?
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like Singapore for the different types of landscapes it has, despite it being a very, very small country. So the main thing that people here do is go shopping, because this place is very much people know it to be a rich country and everything. So there's a lot of malls here, there's a lot of high-end brands. So if you're someone who likes Shima brand like Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Yves Saint Laurent, like YSL, all those things, you can find all the options you need, from makeup to shoes to clothes, everything, jewelry. There's a lot of brands here that you can, and there's a street even set out for just shopping high-end brands, and it's very popular, especially during the Christmas time. There's a lot of decorations there. But if someone who just likes to explore different things without having to spend a lot of money, Singapore also offers the islands that are off of it. So there's some places that you can ferry to. For example, there's a place called Ubin where people go and cycle, and then they also learn about the different communities that lived there before modern times. They can also take a yacht if you have the capacity to rent a yacht to go to another island that's got a nice beach. But yeah, the beaches here are also there. Unfortunately, they're artificial, so they're not as beautiful as those beaches that you've seen in Durban, Cape Town. These beaches were artificially made, but the Singapore does well to take care of them. So you can actually go there and enjoy a beautiful sunset. Like I said, Singapore's most amazing asset, in my opinion, is the sunsets. Here, they're very, very pretty. And the good thing is, it's any time of the year, it's nice to visit Singapore because the weather doesn't change. So it's hot and humid all year. So minimum usually about sometimes it can go as low as 22 degrees, but usually hot. So we're about 27 to 30 degrees, and the humidity also. So it kind of adds a tropical feel. And if that's something that you like, if you like open air, if you like walking in the sun, not when it's too hot, but when it's healthy, you can come here and experience different opportunities, because they have parks, they have beaches, they have islands, there's shopping districts. I think they've done well to create a little microcosm of different experiences in a small country.
Okay, amazing stuff. So now let's go back to music. How has your music grown as you arrived in Singapore? Did it assist with your equipment? What kind of setup do you have over there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think Singapore has definitely helped me with my production. of music. So before Singapore, I did not know what it looked like to have a mic, to have a noise canceling recording studio, all of that. But since arriving here, I have been working in a recording studio. I've got a mic. I've got from time to time a user interface that also helps me, an interface, I mean, that helps me to program my instruments and play accordingly when I'm putting them in my digital audio workstation. So I think Singapore has helped me with my music in terms of digitizing it, putting it online, producing, and also performing. I think because my genre is not as common as the ones that are really known here, people here are more into indie, pop, the Western things. But because Nini, I'm a person of Afrofusion music, performing my music is definitely not as common as if I was in an African country. But I've still had opportunities to perform at campus concert, to go to different sustainability events. A lot of people have encouraged me to continue on with my music, and I take it on as an opportunity for me to just continue to just to continue doing my music, because people here love it even though they might not have heard about it. So I think Singapore has definitely helped me with both my production as well as the part of performing, but in very like unique spaces.
Okay, so I think what we will do is, as we go, we'll then take people through your studio, and we take through, as you do stuff, you can be sharing with our audience.
Yeah.
Now, let's go to your beliefs.
Yeah.
What are you about? What is it
Yeah.
that drives you?
Yeah. So I started off my music fully acknowledging the fact that my work is acknowledging the power that God has in my life. So every time I speak about my music, I say it's Afrofusion with a bit of gospel. And in every type of song that I produce, that I speak about, I always include either biblical reference or just straight up acknowledging the power of God. So, for example, in my first ever release, it actually talks about me praying to God to be safe in uncertain times. And I released that song during COVID period. So it was very much current. It was very relevant to me and to other people. And with my EP as well, I've also talked about the importance of being safe and also feeling protected in the hands of someone who takes care of you. And in this case, for me, it is God. And even in the more recent music that I have released, I have referenced love, joy, and peace, and also just the blessing. So, as people know, the verse that says, "No, like, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life." That's also one of my favorite songs that I like to sing, and it has very much the biblical reference of the blessing. So that's my core belief, especially when I do my music. I'm very much not afraid of communicating the fact that I do this because I am acknowledging the goodness that God has had in my life, despite a lot of things. And what I've realized is that when my music is received, it's very much not in a way of saying like this is only for the Christians, or this is for people who feel like they want to like people who want to just pray, and it's very much a wide audience of listeners that I receive. And even given the different forums that I've had the opportunity to perform at, people who are not necessarily subscribing to any type of faith, but people who just want a message, a positive message that is clean. That's the first thing. And the second thing, it is generally promoting human goodness in general. So that's my core belief. I believe that people can create music that is very much informed by their personal beliefs, and it doesn't have to exclude others. I'm very much someone who believes in like including everyone and sharing my art with the world for people who feel like when they listen to it, they love it, and that's what matters.
Okay, that's great. And I think today, as an introduction, this was quite interesting. let's leave the rest of the detail for future episodes.
Yeah, of course.
I would like to thank you very much for everything that you shared with us. But I'm sure that over the next few weeks, people are going to get to know you much better. How can people contact you?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me at Mpiwa, so at Mpiwa Gwindi, so at Mpiwa Gwindi on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, if you're also on Twitter, and also on email. So same thing, Mpiwa Gwindi. And in the case of the email, it's at gmail.com. If you want to speak to me about a possible partnership or, yeah, just a general idea, I'm very much open. And yeah, generally check out my music at Mpiwa, just Mpiwa in this case. So at Mpiwa on any streaming platform of your choice. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Deezer, Tidal, Amazon Music. I'm everywhere. So you won't miss me. I'm at Mpiwa.
Okay, have you sold music online? How has that been going?
Yes,
Do you
so
think that
I
the
am.
Zimbabweans are buying music?
Yeah, that's good question. Good question. And so I distribute my music online independently through a platform called DistroKid. And yeah, I buy to sell. So I subscribe to this platform on a yearly fee so that I can keep my music online. And through that, people have the opportunity to purchase my music when it is distributed to these streaming platforms. And the ones with the best payout, just for anyone who might want to figure out how best to support me, is please go on Apple Music. My Apple Music payout stream is so much better than the one you Spotify, YouTube, and the rest, because that one actually has iTunes where you can purchase a single for 99 cents up to $2. So those big fees, it might seem very, very small, but compared to what a stream looks like, which is usually less than a cent sometimes, very much buying for like 99 cents up to $2 is so much more significant. So that's how people do it. And to answer your question about Zimbabwe, buying my music, I think I've had a lot of support from a lot of my Zimbabwean friends who like to fully like purchase my music before it's released through like pre-ordering on Apple Music and on iTunes. But right now, I would say that my main listenership is coming from Nairobi, Kenya. So shout out to Nairobi, Kenya. I don't know what happened there. I love the country so much. I would like to visit a lot more, and I will do that very, very soon.
Okay, that's great. I'm going to be in Kenya very soon. So I'll probably be there before you. So
Okay.
I think that is another episode where you take us through how to register on all these platforms. Many young Zimbabwean musicians don't know how to get onto these platforms, but there's a lot to go through. What is your best performing single or
So my
item of
best
music?
Yes, yes, yeah. So my best performing single is actually my copyrighted one.
Yeah.
Yes, it's called Mamuri in You en Toi. It's just talking about appreciating the things that I've seen around the world, no matter where I've gone. God is always there for me, and I'll yeah, just continue to stay faithful to that. And that song has amassed about 58 up to 60,000 streams to date, and I released it. This is all independent organic growth. I released it in March 2023.
Wow, amazing. I think I'm going to just go into your YouTube. So you said I must go to Apple Music, not YouTube, right?
So yeah, so the best is Apple Music, but it's okay if since Mamuri is copyrighted, you can play it anywhere because everything will come to me.
Oh, okay, excellent stuff.
Yes.
So I'm
Yeah.
going to go on your platforms and play Mamuri, and also you have an album or you release only singles?
Yes, so I have so right now I have an extended playlist, my EP. That's my 6-track album, one would say. That's the longest form that I've done, and so far it's just been singles. But an album is underway for 2025 release towards the end of the year. So
Okay.
that's the plan. Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yes.
I think we've covered a lot. Maybe let's go to a bit of family. Tell us
Yes.
about family, your
Yeah.
life, Are you married?
Yeah. Yeah, so great questions. I am the third. So for people who like to guess those things, I am the last born. I don't know if it can tell, but then usually they say the last borns when they are born. After that, the parents just let them be. Hey, that's why I'm all the way far in Asia.
Yeah.
whilst my family is still very much in the Africa, Europe regions. But no, I'm still very much single. I'm young. I'm 23 years old, and yeah. I am an aunt, which is something I'm very very proud of. I'm an aunt. Oh, I'm proud of my sister. I'm an aunt of two nieces and one nephew. So it's very much an adventure every time I go back home because they're very young, six, 4 and 3, and yeah, they're very grown as well. So that's a bit about my family. I've also got a family of very like excellent people who do very well. So they always encourage me to continue doing what I'm doing. They've been supportive since I started my music journey, and then also just very realistic and pragmatic with me regarding like my school and also my work journey. So that's a little bit about my family.
Okay. You talk a lot about your mom
Yes, yeah.
and not about your dad, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Why?
So my yeah, that's okay. That one's a good question. So I think my mom was very much more hands-on to help me, especially with my music projects. And my dad has definitely been the one to where I just honestly just tell him like, hey, like this is what I'm up to, this is what I'm doing, and then he's like, hey, that's great, and yeah, we check in from time to time. But I would say that my mom is very much more of the passionate one in this case. But I think, there's different types of support that different parents offer. That's the best thing I can say, like in terms of how I view the different types of support I can get from my mom and my dad. But I would say during the time that I've worked with my dad, especially with my music stuff, he's definitely helped me to like take me to different theater concerts, especially if I'm the one who's like going to be in the cast and performing and everything. Especially when I was younger, he was very much involved with taking me to school in the morning. So it's a lot. Like there's different types of support that have come from my parents, and I guess when as the older I get, the more I get more grateful for the different things they've done. Especially with school run. I was never a day scholar. I mean, I was never a boarder. That's what I meant to say. I was never a boarder, and that means like I would be traveling from home to school every day, and that was a job that was carried a lot by my dad, especially in my teenage years, and I'm very grateful for that because it also helped me to like continue attending school, but then also do all my things that I was like theater, singing. Instruments and dancing. So it was very an all round in general. Like I had very holistic support from both my parents.
Okay. I think this is great. And let's let people digest what we've said here quite a lot.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say before we close?
I would say like for anyone who would like to get into art and who wants to find what their next move is, especially for people who are now entering the job scene, but have multiple passions that they're not too sure how to continue, especially if it's not applicable in the job sector or if it's not as successful. For people who want to be artists but are finding it difficult to make a living out of it, I would say that find other ways to keep that passion alive and trust the process. Because I have definitely asked myself this question, and a lot of people have as well. Are you going to do music full time since you kind of had a little bit of success with it? Is this something that you want to do full time? And I realistically tell them, if I do my music full time right now, I will not be able to survive. So I kind of have to be realistic with myself to say that for now, it's good to do some other things that kind of help you to make time for the music or passion, or find a way to mix the two, which is something that I'm definitely trying to do because, we are not one dimensional people. We don't have just one thing that we do in life. We are very complex human beings, and trust yourself to be doing other things that can also help you with your life trajectory that might not be in the traditional way that people understand it. So for anyone who might be wondering what to do, especially if they feel like their strengths are not as successful, just continue to trust yourself to do whatever you feel initially is possible and afford yourself opportunities in the future through what you have done now.
Okay, that is great, Mpiwa. And I would like to thank you and appreciate you for joining. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again very, very soon.